Welcome to part 6 of What If Naruto Had Family Left. Link in description. I was asked for a Naruto X Tenten fanfic ship next. I will look, but that ship is hard to find. If you enjoy this fanfic, please like, comment, and subscribe for more. Spirals Hidden in the Leaves by Mr. Spinner. Chapter 11. Naruto didn't really know what he was expecting when cousin Ken had picked him up from the academy that day. Probably just another averagely awesome day of training. What he had not expected, or perhaps not allowed himself to hope for, was the news that he would get an actual birthday party this year. All of his first year at the academy, he'd heard his fellow students gush about their birthdays when they came up. Times of presents, parties, and most importantly being surrounded by people who loved you. The closest Naruto had to any of that was when instructor Iruka had taken him to Ikiraku's for his last birthday. Well, that and the yearly festival celebrating the Nine Tails being beaten. But he was chased off the one time he'd tried to go to that, so it really didn't count. But cousin Ken had said that this year he'd actually have a party. He'd be allowed to invite anyone he wanted from his class, too. The thought of presents did cross his mind, but it was washed away by the tide of the idea that he'd have a party, something to actually talk about this year. At the moment, Naruto was practicing his freeform katas in the schoolyard while he waited for Ken to finish up a quick talk with instructor Iruka. He had a feeling it was about his party, maybe Ken was inviting him personally. Naruto was in the middle of spinning on his heel to catch an imaginary enemy in the stomach when several gray blurs rushed by him. Naruto yelped as the rush of air from their passage threatened to push him over. He was teetering, and falling, when Ken caught him and placed him on his feet. "You okay there, kiddo?" he chuckled. "You betcha," Naruto affirmed. "It'll take more than a stiff breeze to keep me down, you know." "I don't doubt it," Ken chuckled before taking the lead back to their house. A few minutes later, the shadow clones that had almost knocked Naruto over went their separate ways to fulfill their purpose. Ken's talk with Iruka had been to get a list of students that seemed to hold no grudge against Naruto, a list that was depressingly short at 5 students. One shadow clone stopped before the Nara clan compound and knocked on the gates. "Thank goodness Iruka is such a thorough teacher," Ken said to himself. And it was true, Iruka had made a point to visit each of his students' families in person within the first 6 weeks of the academic year, starting as close to the first class day as possible. When the gates opened, Ken checked the diagram of the compound Iruka had given him and followed it to the correct house. Hoping that someone was there since classes had let out for the day, he knocked. A muffled shout emanated from the house before a very familiar figure opened the door. "Commander Shikaku?" Ken asked, surprised at seeing the only Nara he knew. "Ah, Uzumaki. Come for information on the upcoming exams?" he asked with a chuckle. Ken cast a glance at the rest of the compound and then down at the diagram again, making sure he had the right house. Your son's name wouldn't be Shikamaru, would it?" he asked. Shikaku's eyebrows arched before he called into the house for someone named Yoshino. This brought a woman, clearly Shikaku's wife, to the door. "May I help you, sir?" she asked politely. Before Ken could answer, she cast a sidelong glance at her husband. "I hope this bum hasn't been wasting your time." "How would I be doing that, exactly, when he came here of his own volition?" Shikaku asked with a long-suffering air, as if he knew what the answer would be. "Knowing you, dear husband, you'd find a damn way," Yoshino snapped. And then, like the flip of a switch, she smiled even more politely at Ken. "I'm sorry, you said you had something for Shikamaru?" she asked. Ken hesitated for a moment at this woman's quicksilver temper, but his grandfather's timeless advice about ninja quirks helped him brush it off. My name is Ken Uzumaki. I'm Naruto's cousin and caretaker." He removed a plain envelope from his back pocket and handed it to Yoshino, who opened it under her husband's curious eyes. "I'm throwing Naruto a birthday party tomorrow evening, and instructor Iruka said your son seemed to have no problem with him. I know Naruto's going to announce an open invitation tomorrow in his class, but I had hoped you would consider it yourself. I won't ask you to bring anything, especially so soon. But I know Naruto would appreciate it if you came with your boy." Yoshino and Shikaku were silent for a moment as they each perused the admittedly simple invitation, then looked at each other for a silent moment. Shikaku sighed and shook his head with a faint smirk. I don't see why not, he agreed. Unfortunately, I've got a meeting tomorrow evening, so my old lady will be bringing him. You know I don't care for the term, cuckoo, Yoshino snapped, crossing her arms and glaring at her husband. Well, I don't like it when you call me that in front of company, so we're even, he snarked before departing with a wave at Ken. Ooh, that man drives me up the wall, Yoshino seethed, then chuckled. To clarify, Shikamaru and I will definitely attend. Little Naruto could use some friends. Ken blinked at the use of his cousin's name and smiled at the fact that this family seemed to hold no ill will toward Naruto. Thank you, ma'am, he said, before the clone dispersed into a cloud of smoke, much to Yoshino's bemusement. Another of Ken's shadow clones made his way to a clan compound nestled between the village's small restaurant and larger grocers' districts. He was surprised to find the gate open as he made his way in and located the home of one Choji Akamichi. As he had before, Ken knocked on the door and waited, praying just as the other had that someone was home. The door was opened by a full-bodied woman with short-cropped black hair and small orange markings on the corner of each eye. May I help you? She asked kindly. As before, the clone introduced himself and offered an invitation and explanation. Unlike before, a child who had to be the boy in question wandered to the door while they were talking and tugged on his mother's pants. Mom, can I have my snack now? He asked. Ken was ashamed to realize that his first thought was to ask if that was a good idea, but doubted that it would do any good. Are you Choji? He asked instead. The boy looked up and nodded, prompting Ken to kneel to the boy's level and explain to him as well. The boy looked down as if in deep thought before looking back up with a light in his eye. Will there be snacks? He asked eagerly. Choji, his mother said in a gently chastising tone, remember what we talked about. Food is not everything. Many times you have to do things just because it is right. Choji nodded at his mother's words and looked Ken straight in the eye. I'd like to come to Naruto's party, he said. The clone smiled and thanked them both before dispelling. Goodness, I wonder what he's in such a hurry about, the Lady Akamichi wondered. While Ken's third, fourth, and fifth clones made their way to the compounds of the Aburame and Inuzuka clans and Ichiraku Ramen, securing 4 more confirmed invitations in the process, the sixth and final clone found himself staring at the elaborate Hyuga estate, a place so large it no longer qualified as a compound. Given his penchant for stories, Ken was aware of the rumors of the prowess and prestige of the Hyuga clan. And that reputation unnerved him. He glanced at the pair of guards manning the gates to the walls surrounding the estate, both of them glaring at him with their white eyes since he'd stopped before them. I have something for. As he stepped forward, one of the guards lunged, Byakugan suddenly active, and struck him in the gut. It would have merely been a debilitating strike to a flesh and blood victim, but to a shadow clone it was a death sentence. The clone dispersed, leaving the invitation to flutter to the ground. Trouble with the wife? The other guard asked stoically. Shut up, the attacker growled. He knew he had acted too rashly there, his partner didn't have to rub it in. He picked up the envelope reading, to Hinata Hyuga and her parents, and, after an examination with his Byakugan to check for explosive tags, poison tags, or any other assassination methods. He tucked it into his robes and decided to pass it along to the clan head. Maybe he should visit the onsen when his shift was over, try to relax. As the memories from his shadow clones intermittently appeared during their walk home, Ken couldn't shake the feeling that he or Naruto were being watched. Unwilling to reveal that he knew just yet, he used the windowpane of a bakery to see if he could catch a glimpse of whomever it may be. It took several more store windows to catch the common denominator, and the result was unexpected. When they finally arrived at the assigned house, Ken passed Naruto the key. Why don't you head inside and continue your katas in the living room? Ken suggested. I'll be there in a minute. Naruto tilted his head at the request, but shrugged and did as he was told. As soon as he was gone, Ken mentally took the natural steps to convert his chakra to yin release form, the ratio of spiritual energy to physical energy in the mix sharply rising. With a string of hand seals, inky blackness descended upon the block. Ken took a moment to open his mind's eye and used it to search through the artificial dark until he found the faint glow of a chakra signature utterly different from his own. He approached, the darkness muffling the sound of his steps until he came up behind the target, only then releasing his technique and closing his mind's eye. As soon as the darkness faded away, the target started and spun around to reveal an adorable little girl. The pale, pearly eyes marked her as a Hyuga and the unmarked forehead as a member of the main house that Iruka had explained to him. She was dressed in pale robes, her hands clasped together in fright and the swollen veins around her eyes slowly returning to normal. "Hi there," Ken greeted, trying to be as warm as he could. He lowered himself to squat to her level, trying to keep himself as unthreatening as possible. "Your name wouldn't happen to be Hinata, would it?" The little girl nodded jerkily, still clearly on edge. "Sorry about all of that," Ken said with a wince. "I had to make sure you didn't run off. Do you mind if I ask why you were following me and my cousin?" "See cousin?" Hinata stuttered. "So it's true. Father said there was a new Uzumaki." She looked back at the house, her expression almost longing. Ken mulled that over for a few seconds before grinning, his memories from the encounter at the Hyuga estate still fresh. "You know, Naruto's having a birthday party tomorrow." Ken fished one of the spare invitations from his back pocket and handed it to her. "Would you like to come?" Hinata was trembling as she took the invitation, reading it over as she seemed at war with herself. "I'm sure he'd really like for you to attend," he added. And just like that, the trembling stopped. Hinata took a deep breath and nodded. "I would very much like to attend Naruto's party," she replied. "Wonderful," Ken smiled, standing up. "And for the record, when I cast the technique," he tapped his face right next to his eye, "you did great in triggering your eyes. A very smart move." He moved around her and made his way back to the house. "And one last thing," he called back, drawing the little girl's gaze. "Naruto won't bite. You should talk to him. I think he'd really like to be your friend." And he was gone before she could bring herself to reply. After yet another long day of dispensing missions, analyzing intelligence, and miscellaneous paperwork, Hiruzen made his way to his home in the Sarutobi clan compound. Despite popular belief, he did not in fact live in Hokage Tower, though his many late nights could make even he, himself, feel as if he did. He was really getting too old for this. Another factor to his many late nights the last several years may have been the prospect of returning to an empty house. Since the loss of his beloved Bawako 8 years hence, as of tomorrow, he had been both unwilling to find another wife and too busy to give it much effort even if he had wanted to. But tonight he was too tired to be lonely, the prospect of a late night visit to the compound's private onsen and slipping into his own bed very attractive. Those plans were put on the figurative backburner at the sight that greeted him at his door. His young cousin so many times removed, Tomoko, was meditating on his porch with her personal summon Yama. Upon Hiruzen's approach, the stocky monkey peeked an eye open before vanishing back to the mountain of fruit and flowers, where his tribe called home. "Good evening, uncle," Tomoko said with a smile, slowly opening her eyes. Hiruzen smiled back, albeit a bit more tiredly. He could almost feel the lines of his face deepening with each passing year. In the back of his mind, he determined that it may be time to search out a successor to the hat. "Good evening, niece," he replied. "Is there any particular reason you're on my porch at this hour? Is Kato having trouble with his harness training?" Tomoko chuckled. "No, nothing like that. Honestly, uncle, you act as if we youngsters only approach you if we want something." Hiruzen quirked an eyebrow, though his smile remained unchanged. "Isn't that what we old coots are good for? Spoiling the next generation." Tomoko rolled her eyes with a scoff. "It's not all you're good for. Even if you were really good at it." Hiruzen's smile grew a bit, in width and in warmth. "So what business does a youngster like you have with an old man at this hour if you don't want something?" "I wanted to give you something, actually," Tomoko smirked, holding out an envelope. Hiruzen took the envelope gently and opened it to reveal a simple invitation to a party for the 8th birthday of one Naruto Uzumaki, to be held in the backyard of their assigned quarters. Hiruzen chuckled, pleased that young Ken seemed to be taking his role as caretaker so seriously. "For the record, Red forgot the kid's birthday was so close until I mentioned it," Tomoko noted, then smirked. Then he almost lost his head with worry over trying to do well. Hiruzen tapped the card against his palm and made up his mind. "While I have my day full preparing for the festival tomorrow, I see no reason why I can't take a break to wish a young boy a happy birthday." Wonderful. I'll try to keep my mouth shut until then. I really want to see everyone's faces when the vaunted professor shows up to a kid's party. With that, she bid her uncle good night and started toward her own home a few houses down. But before Tomoko could make more than 3 steps, a thought crossed her mind. Uncle, Uzumaki uses shadow clones for all kinds of things. Why don't you use them for paperwork? The sound of dropping keys was her only warning. Most of the Sarutobi compound was then awakened by a scream that was laced with disbelief, frustration, shame, and traces of hope, all rolled into a terrifying sound that lasted for a solid 4 minutes. I guess that's my answer, she said with a cringe and a sweat drop. Naruto could barely keep himself contained as class began the next day. As always, Instructor Iruka went through a small number of announcements before they got on with the meat of the class. Now then, does anyone else have something they'd like to announce? Iruka asked. That was enough to draw most of the class's attention. Iruka never opened the floor for announcements, explained only by bad experiences during his first year teaching. As if on cue, and those who were observant like Shikamaru or Sasuke noticed the brief smile on Iruka's face that implied that that was close to truth, Naruto's hand shot straight up. Yes, Naruto. Iruka asked. I'm having a birthday party today right after school before the festival starts. Anyone who wants to come is invited. Naruto's wide grin faded a bit as he remembered something Ken had told him last night. Even Sasuke is invited. This earned a faint scoff from the brooding Uchiha. Who would want to go to a party for you? One of the girls in the class asked meanly. I'm going, Kiba brazenly announced. It'll be a good way to spend the time before the festival. That's enough, Iruka interrupted. Naruto has made his announcement. And all of you can make the choice to celebrate your classmate's birthday or not. He turned and began writing names and birth-death dates of historical figures on the blackboard. And for the record, I'm going too. Over the course of the last 8 years, since he had learned the shadow clone technique from his grandfather, Ken had thanked the memory of Tobirama Senju for both devising the technique and sharing it with the Uzumaki. Even outside of combat, it was just so damned useful. Before team training on their final day off, Ken had conjured a number of shadow clones to pick up everything he'd need for a small-scale party: streamers, teacup candles and torches for ambiance, snacks, the cake, and so forth, and had them set up the backyard of their assigned house. Several vats of ramen were even being graciously donated by Teuchi and Ayame, which Ken was certain would make the party perfect in Naruto's eyes no matter what. But he was still determined to do what he could for Naruto's first birthday party. Fortunately, there was little better to take your mind off of things than a sparring session with a Sarutobi. Ken was practicing with his adamantine sealing chains while Tomoko was honing her bojutsu with Yama, who was transformed into the monkey-exclusive adamantine staff. Tomoko had suggested the matchup after hearing the name of Ken's technique, and openly wondered which was more resilient. So I forgot to ask, Ken grunted as he swung the chains extending from 3 sides of his arm and gripped in his fist like a whip, each of his lashes blocked by Tomoko's staff with a bell-like ring. Where's Aoba? I just figured he was late, but he doesn't seem to be coming at all. He's a specialized jonin, Tomoko answered. They had a really tough nut down at T and Amp, and they wanted his help to crack him. Something about strength in numbers. With that, Tomoko slid her hands down the staff to grip it at one of its golden ends and hurled it end over end at Ken like a giant shuriken. Ken dove away and took the chance to rush Tomoko, but a slowly rising whirring sound behind him forced him to dodge again. As he sidestepped out of his previous line of movement, he felt the air displaced by the adamantine staff as it whirled through where he had just been. Tomoko caught it without much trouble and spun her weapon back into its standard position, her stance wide and ready. While Ken leapt backward for some distance to catch his breath and consider his next move, Tomoko took advantage of another facet of the adamantine staff transformation. Any advice on this, Sir Yama? She asked, quietly so as not to tip off Ken. I have little personal experience with this particular Uzumaki sealing art, Yama admitted, his voice emanating from the staff. And in case you were wondering, those blades on the ends kind of sting. They actually hurt you? Tomoko asked, honestly surprised. The adamantine staff was as close to indestructible as anything could get. She had never heard of a blade sharp enough to cause the user pain while transformed, except maybe fabled weapons like the sword of Kusanagi. Well, they're not called adamantine chains just for poetic reasons, the old monkey deadpanned. Lord Enma reported that those chains bound the nine-tailed fox, when it was at full strength and the user was at death's door. They are not to be underestimated. Whatever Yama was going to say next was put on hold by a subtle rumble in the ground beneath them. Tomoko jumped to escape the chains that burst from the ground a split second later. Ha! Seen it? Tomoko laughed. Little one, above. Yama's voice hissed. Tomoko swung the staff upward to block a set of chains interwoven into a grasping claw. She put more force into the swing and used it to knock herself away. Sir Yama, we need the high ground, Tomoko said. As she fell, Tomoko planted the staff vertically into the ground and firmly gripped the top. With her grip secure, the staff expanded, lengthening until it was well above the treetops of the training ground. When the staff stopped growing, Tomoko used her upward momentum to flip and perch one-footed on the tip of the staff. You have not asked for the high ground in quite a while, Yama noted. It was traditional for those who signed the monkey contract to be taught bojutsu by another signer. During training with the transformation, taking the high ground was considered a move of last resort. In battle, though, it was a viable and often very effective tactic. Let's hope he doesn't have a seal to help him fly, Tomoko snarked, furiously thinking of what she could do next. While she enjoyed fighting, perhaps a little too much sometimes, she was even more determined to win this than usual. She was a Sarutobi, losing was not in her nature. Perhaps the adamantine prison wall, Yama suggested. No, Ken knows the hiding like a mole technique, he'd just dig his way out. Tomoko thought for another moment before she had an idea. It was a little underhanded, but they were ninjas, underhanded was their bread and butter. I've got it. We're going to get him back into close quarters to minimize his chain's long-range capabilities, then you're going to give him a little surprise. Understood, Yama said, before rapidly retracting from further down. Tomoko swept up the now standard 5-foot pole and rapidly spun it above her head, channeling wind chakra down its length and slowing her fall. She had barely landed on a tree branch before she had to leap again at the sound of Ken's chains, now sporting blunt-weighted ends as they smashed the branch to splinters. Tomoko landed lightly and turned to smash away another barrage of chains that were reeled back into Ken's arms. Taking that opening, Tomoko used the staff to pole vault and close the distance. Ken smirked and summoned the chains in his arm, wrapping them around his forearm to block her overhead strike. Sir Yama, she cried as a signal. Yama's head emerged in a puff of smoke from the tip of the staff. His arms growing from the sides close to his head and he swung at Ken with one arm and used the other one to secure a hold on his forearm. Damn it! Ken shouted, swinging around the staff to barely avoid Yama's grasp. No getting out of it. He cried out before using his other arm to summon more chains and wrap them around the length of the staff, praying his tactic would work. Ken focused and mentally locked the chains, tightening them to bind chakra. A second later, Yama vanished in a poof of smoke. With nothing to support him, Ken fell back to the ground and rolled to his feet. He retracted the chains back into his arms and took a step back into a combat-ready stance in case Tomoko tried anything. How'd you do that? Tomoko asked. The adamantine sealing chains can bind chakra, it's great for neutralizing opponents. When a summon is bound like that, it represses the link between them and the summoner and returns them to their homeland. Tomoko crossed her arms with a huff. That's cheating, she pouted. And having your adamantine staff grow arms and a head to attack with isn't? Ken asked. Tomoko slumped. Touché, she admitted. And for the record, he could still talk to me while transformed, she added. No secrets, huh? Ken smirked. Only in spars, Tomoko shrugged. She glanced up to judge the time. The academy lets out in about 2 hours. We should probably go shower and check on the decorations. Ken asked. Don't friends invite friends to parties? Tomoko asked. I just didn't think an 8-year-old's party would interest you. I'm not even sure how many people are showing up. Well, then you can guarantee 1, she giggled. 2 if Uncle can come, she silently added. Well, then I guess we'd better get ready, Ken agreed. Spirals hidden in the leaves by Mr. Spinner. Chapter 12. When the bell finally rang for the end of the class day, Naruto was out the door so fast he might as well have used a body flicker. He burst out of the doors to the building and into the sunshine with a deep breath. Today was the day. Naruto. Naruto looked up at the sound of his name to find a man looking down at him with an amused smirk. The guy looked like Shikamaru, but with some scars across his face that had Naruto open-mouthed. Hey, I remember you from Cousin Ken's test thingy. Those scars are awesome. I wish I could get scars like that, but I heal too fast. Are you related to Shikamaru Nara? I should hope so, the man said. He's my son. He held his hand out. Shikaku Nara. Naruto looked at the hand for a moment, almost dumbfounded that someone was willing to shake his hand, and grabbed it with both of his own to shake with as much vigor as he could. Making friends, kiddo? Ken asked as he walked up. I sure hope so, Naruto grinned, mimicking Shikaku. Making a new friend, dear? Yoshino asked, approaching with Shikamaru in tow. She glanced at Ken with a faint smirk, having heard his jest to the boy. I'm too old to be making new friends, Shikaku replied. It's too much work, anyway, Shikamaru deadpanned. Oh, that's bull, Naruto cut himself off with a fake cough under Ken's narrowed eyes. It's bull, he amended with a tight smile. As well as combat training and chakra control, Ken had been doing his best to improve Naruto's abysmal manners. Wasn't the kid's fault, he'd been raised practically alone. He smirked at the proof that he was making headway in that area. Well done, Yoshino commended. You'll make an excellent father someday. Ken scoffed and rubbed the back of his neck. On that note, let's collect the other guests and get moving. We're burning daylight as it is. Other guests? Naruto wondered. Other guests. Before they'd begun the trip back to their rental house, Ken had collected a number of Naruto's classmates, each with one or two of their parents. A decent crowd had followed them back to the house and into the backyard. As they entered, Naruto was stunned at the orange streamers that were hung among the trees bordering the yard, the high torches just within the tree line, and the table of snacks and cake laying ready for consumption. A huge stone obstacle course had been erected, and the makings of other games sat to the side in preparation. He looked up to Ken, who was watching him for any reaction. Ken grunted as Naruto slammed into him with a fearsome hug. Thanks, Cousin Ken, Naruto whispered. You're welcome, kiddo, Ken whispered back with a watery smile. If you two want a moment alone, we can all go, a large man who was probably an Akamichi suggested wryly. Wait, no. It's a party. Naruto cheered. Let's have fun. With that, the kids scattered to the activities that Tomoko had recommended to him. Ken had used earth release and lumber he'd gotten from a salvage yard to build an obstacle course for the ninja kids. It was basically a large-scale jungle gym, but it seemed to appeal to the kids. Later, there would be a treasure hunt framed as a ninja mission, a Fokunai marksmanship contest, and he was ready to create a massive checkers board for the kids to act as the pieces. Not bad for a first-timer, the large, rotund, red-headed man complimented. Judging by the markings on his cheeks, coupled with his size, there was no way he couldn't be an Akamichi. Thanks, Ken replied. And you are? Choza Akamichi, the man offered, along with a hand to shake. Ken shook it and nodded. Have you been making friends in the village? Choza asked. Ken barked a laugh. One of my teammates tried to force that and it didn't end well, Ken said. I'd like to, but starting up a career in a new village is hard enough. Throw in a rambunctious, hyperactive kid into the mix and I don't have much time to peruse potential friendships. Well, I'd say this right here is a perfect opportunity, Choza chuckled, gesturing widely at the parents of the party guests all gathered in groups to talk and pass the time. Ken blinked as he realized the truth of Choza's words. And then the familiar sense of dread began to pool in his belly, his hands getting clammy and his heart rate quickening. But before he could begin to spiral, Choza clapped a meaty hand on his shoulder, startling him from his thoughts. Why don't I introduce you to some people? He offered, gently steering Ken toward one particular group. The group was composed of the Nara and Akamichi women that Ken's clones had encountered the day before, the latter presumably Choza's wife. There was also a tall blonde man and a brunette woman with her hair tied in a bun. Ken took a deep breath and focused on the fact that he had already technically met two of these people, and overall they only counted 5. Well, if it isn't our gracious host, the Akamichi matron said with a wide smile. Ken, I believe you have met my wife, Lady Itsuko, Choza said, gesturing at her, as well as Lady Yoshino Nara. The Nara mother nodded. And these two, he gestured at the strangers, or Lord Inoichi and Lady Natsumi Yamanaka. The Yamanaka couple nodded and gave a small wave, respectively. Enough with the Lord and Lady business, Yoshino scolded lightly, crossing her arms. We're all friends here. Just making sure the boy knows who he's dealing with, Choza chuckled, raising his hands in mock surrender. I actually don't know what I'm dealing with here, Ken noted. All of us, Inoichi said, gesturing to them, are the heads of our respective clans. Inoichi grinned mischievously. Including, I believe, you yourself, he noted. Ken took a step back in surprise as that realization hit him like a bucket of cold water. I suppose I am, he replied. After all this time, he hadn't realized that re-establishing the Uzumai clan made him a clan head by default. That was not an encouraging notion. But enough of that foolishness, Yoshino repeated. This is a child's party, for heaven's sake. None of those blasted village politics here. Who's trashing village politics? Up to the group strode a fierce-looking woman with spiky dark hair and two fang-shaped markings on her cheeks. Whoever it is, I want in on it, the woman cackled. Itsuko greeted warmly, as demure as ever, I see. Not on your life, the Soom woman said, crossing her arms. She glanced at Ken and her expression turned to a wolfish grin. And you must be the new meat. In regards to parenting, Ken asked rhetorically. Yes I am. He flexed his fingers, some of the joints popping. But in regards to ninja life. Not on your life. Soom cackled at the echoed words. Oh, I like this kid, she said. If you ever need a ninja hound for a job, look me up. Soom Inuzuka at the Shinobi Kennels. With that, she nodded to the group and returned to her previous group composed of Aoba, Tiuchi, Ayame, and Iruka. Maybe it was the Soom woman's blatant rejection of pretense or maybe it was the general friendliness of all of these new faces, but Ken found himself slowly relaxing. He listened closely as the group caught up and was touched when they asked him gentle questions about himself, his time in Konoha so far, and his new rearing of Naruto and the boy's progress. Nothing too deep, but none too shallow either. After some time, Ken called for the kids to gather Naruto to open his gifts, which he assured them would be followed by cake and games. He was happy to see the kids gathered around, a feeling that was replaced by awe as each of them revealed bags and packages for Naruto that they placed on a table that held a few parcels. Naruto blinked a few times at the small collection of presents before swallowing thickly, clearly resisting the urge to cry. Thanks, everyone. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. A boy that could only be Soom's son shouted brazenly. Just open him up. Naruto laughed and grabbed one at random. He peeled open the wrapping paper to reveal a pair of brown leather fingerless gloves, the knuckles reinforced with metal studs. They're training gloves, Soom pointed out. So you can hit trees or dummies as hard as you like without hurting your hands. Naruto grinned and pulled the gloves on, securing them with Velcro strips around the wrists. So cool, he shouted. In short order, Naruto unwrapped a ramen cookbook from the Akamikas, a collection of flower seeds from the Yamanakas, some jars of fresh honey from the Ibarames and their family hives. A shogi set from the Naras with Yoshino mentioning the game may help Naruto learn patience and strategy. A historical joke book from Iruka in the hopes that the jokes would help Naruto remember history, a book of riddles from Aoba, and an Ichiraku gift card from Tiuchi and Ayame. With each gift, Naruto loudly thanked the giver, actually crying at the gift certificate. The pattern was broken by little Hinata being escorted by her caretaker, whom Ken would learn to be named Ko, to offer Naruto a simple jar, her cheeks adorably pink. Hello, Naruto, she said wistfully. Hi. Naruto replied. It's Hina, right? Hinata, she gently corrected. She presented the jar to him. It's some of my clan's healing ointment. In case of training accidents. Ken didn't miss the looks between the guests at this gift. Clearly it was something special. What do you say, Naruto? Ken prodded. Thank you so much, Hinata. Naruto grinned, causing the girl's pink cheeks to turn full on crimson. Without warning, the boy swept her up in a full-body hug. The hug lasted a full 3 seconds, but apparently that was enough for her to get dizzy from the blood rushing to her face. Ken chuckled at the thought that little Hinata's cheeks might actually set on fire. I suppose that just leaves my gifts, Ken said, drawing Naruto's attention. He offered 2 packages, one smaller and boxy, the other large and fluffy looking. Naruto took the bigger one and tore open the plain brown paper to reveal a number of shirts and a few jackets, all in dark colors or burnt orange. And each with the Uzumaki swirl on the front and back. I thought it was time for you to proclaim your clan with pride, Ken smiled. Naruto chuckled and quickly shed his orange shirt to replace it with a burnt orange shirt with a navy swirl on the chest. Thanks, cuz, he said before taking the other gift. He removed more plain brown paper to reveal a set of training ninja tools containing a number of wooden kunai and a collection of wooden throwing stars. Whoa, Naruto gasped. Figured when we reach weapons training soon enough, you'll want something to work with alone, he chuckled, privately thanking Tomoko, who had yet to arrive, for suggesting it. Naruto crashed into Ken and babbled his thanks, to which the older Uzumaki just hugged him tighter. After a few minutes, the pair broke apart. Well, if that concludes the gift giving, Ken said, I believe everyone's on something of a time crunch, so let's. Not quite concluded, I'm afraid, a stately voice, gravelly with age and familiar to everyone there, called out. Through the gate entered Lord Hiruzen, Tomoko, and a large man with long white hair that Ken did not recognize. We have yet to offer our congratulations. Hi Gramps, Naruto shouted, waving almost frantically. And other people, too. Hello Naruto, Hiruzen said with a warm smile, removing his hat to reveal his short, spiky gray hair. I'm glad we made it in time. With that he removed a small piece of brown paper from his robe's pocket. Now, refresh my memory, Uruka. Have the students learned to focus their chakra yet? Yes, Lord Hokage, Uruka replied quizzically. Wonderful, he replied with a smile and removed a square of light brown paper from his robes. Naruto, this is only a small part of your gift. This is a piece of chakra induction paper used to determine which of the 5 nature transformations will be easiest for you to use. Try and focus your chakra into it. Naruto took the paper and shrugged before screwing his face up in concentration. After a few seconds, the paper cleanly split in half. Whoops. Sorry, Gramps, but I think I broke your paper. Many in the crowd chuckled at Naruto's words. No, you did not, Naruto, Hiruzen said wryly. The paper worked perfectly. You see, it reacts differently to each element. He removed another piece of induction paper, one that bursts into flames. For those with an affinity for fire, it burns to ash. From water, the paper grows damp. Earth causes the paper to crumble to dust, while lightning makes it wrinkle. And wind makes it slice in two. He pointed at the papers in Naruto's hand, just like that. Naruto stared at the paper in his hand. Wow. He looked at Ken. What does your paper do, cuz? I have an earth affinity, so it crumbles into dirt, Ken answered. Now then, Hiruzen interrupted gently, the paper was only part of it. It was a way to inform what your real gift would be. With that, he removed a scroll from his robe and handed it to Naruto. Who broke a seal with the character for wind, holding it closed and unfurled it. Naruto's eyes scrunched in confusion before growing with revelation. Is this a ninja technique? That it is, Hiruzen confirmed, a simple wind release technique called the Gale Palm. Of course, you won't be able to learn it until after you master wind transformation. But I thought you might like a demonstration of what you will be working towards. Hiruzen stepped away and wove a single hand seal, causing semi-opaque wisps of wind to gather around his hands before he clapped his palms together and thrust them forward to send a powerful gust of wind hurtling before him to rattle the trees and kick up a cloud of dust that was then blown away. Whoa, cool, Naruto shouted, echoed by all of the children in the crowd. Well, there's no way I can compete with that, Tomoko quipped lightly, pulling a round parcel from a messenger bag at her side and handing it to Naruto. But maybe you'll like this. Naruto gently took the gift before fixing her with a quizzical look. Not to be rude or whatever, but who are you? Tomoko gasped dramatically, placing one hand against her chest and the back of the other to her forehead. Oh, Ken, how could you not tell your only family about your strongest, hottest, most awesomeest companion? I am shocked beyond all recompense. You monster. Ken facepalmed with a growling sigh while everyone else chuckled, Haruka even clapping slowly at the over-the-top performance. Naruto, though, paled at Tomoko's response. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. Hey, wait a minute. He turned to face Ken with an accusing finger pointing at his cousin. How could you hurt this nice lady's feelings, Cousin Ken? Aren't you the one always saying to treat women with respect and all that stuff? He pointed backward at Tomoko without breaking his gaze from Ken. Apologize right now. Ken's expression was utterly deadpan as he looked from his little cousin to his currently least favorite teammate. Naruto, this is one of my teammates, Tomoko Sarutobi. In retrospect, he had been rather tight-lipped about his team as well as the missions, maybe that was a mistake. He grumbled a bit under his breath before exhaling. Tomoko, I apologize for not telling my cousin about you and your. He grit his teeth. Awesomeness. Tomoko giggled. Ah, that's okay. Water under the bridge. She ruffled Naruto's spikes. I guess I'll just have to come by and tell little Naruto about my greatness myself to make sure it happens. She looked at his untouched present and crossed her arms. So, kid, are you gonna open that or just hold it forever? Naruto shrugged and tore the paper off to reveal a stuffed plush fox, which made him turn red in the cheeks. Tomoko knelt and placed her hands over his. Just to remind you that not all foxes are bad. They're clever and tricky, but some like to use their tricks to help others. She smiled gently. Just like I know you will use your tricks to help the village one day. Naruto blinked, his expression neutral, before grinning widely. You know it, pretty lady. I'm gonna serve this village better than anyone else when I earn that hat. He pointed at Lord Hiruzen to illustrate his point. And then everyone will see I'm more than the fox. I'll protect the village with everything I've got. Well, if you're anything like your cousin, Tomoko said, you really have a shot at it. She knelt by Naruto's ear and whispered, I've got something else for you too. Something I wanna keep secret from Red. I'll give it to you before I leave. Naruto grinned, glancing back at Ken. You know, I'm glad Cousin Ken has an awesome and understanding girlfriend like you. What? Ken shouted, his face rapidly reddening to match his hair. Where did that come from? Naruto cackled, along with the crowd. Gotcha. As if you could land a girlfriend as awesome as her. Yeah, Red, Tomoko giggled, her arms loosely crossed. As if. Before Ken could say something he would no doubt regret, the white-haired man stepped forward. As much as I like seeing any guy get knocked down a peg by a kid and a lovely lady, I think I'm the last in line here. He handed Naruto a book with a very long title. The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. Naruto read. That was a favorite of your father's, the man said, quietly enough that no one else could hear. Naruto gasped and clutched the book to his chest, tears welling in his eyes. Who are you? He asked. My name is Jiraiya the Toad Sage, the man, Jiraiya, replied. Ken's eyes widened in recognition of the famed Sannin. I was the one who taught your father. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that if your parents were alive, they would be proud of you. Bad with kids my foot, Hiruzen thought idly. Well, how about some cake and ninja games? Tomoko said loudly, drawing cheers from the child attendees. The festival would be starting soon and everyone would want to go, but there was no way they'd miss the best parts of a birthday party. And when the party had wound down and everyone was heading home, Tomoko knelt before Naruto, carefully out of Ken's line of sight, and passed him a small bottle with a wry grin. Naruto glanced at it and at his older cousin before pocketing it. Hours later, Ken felt a pleasant mix of contentment and exhaustion as he, Naruto, and Tomoko trudged toward the rental house and Sarutobi compound from the main body of the festival grounds. Even after cake, the three had stuffed themselves with fried foods and played a few rigged games before settling to watch the fireworks. And through it all, Tomoko had stayed with them, laughing at Naruto's antics and losing it with glee when the kid roped Ken into them in turn. As they reached the house, Tomoko stifled a yawn and ruffled Naruto's spikes. See ya later, Kit. I hope you had a good birthday. I had the absolute best birthday in the history of birthdays. Naruto replied, his volume muffled by both general exhaustion and multiple sugar crashes. It seemed even his young Uzumaki stamina had a limit. Thanks, Tomoko, for sticking with us. He grinned in Ken's direction. I know Cousin Ken enjoyed it. Hush, kid, Ken griped good-naturedly. Get inside, brush your teeth, and hit the hay. We've got chakra training tomorrow. Naruto groaned at the prospect before heading inside. He's a sweet boy, Tomoko noted, a statement of fact delivered with genuine warmth. That he is, Ken agreed. And thanks, by the way. You know, for coming with us. I appreciate it. Anytime, Ken, she said with a smile before turning and heading toward the Sarutobi compound. Don't forget, we've got our first local C rank tomorrow, too. So rest up, she called with a wave. Ken huffed a laugh and prepared to enter the house before a light cough caught his attention. Years of paranoia came flooding back and he had his black-bladed, seal-scribed wakizashi out in an instant, swinging at the subject without thought. It was only as his blade was within inches of the victim that he realized he'd probably overreacted. As it turned out, he was wrong in a sense. He'd underreacted to the threat of a Sanin. Lord Jiraiya ducked and swept Ken's legs out from under him in a single elegant movement before lunging and grabbing Ken by the face to force his head to the ground. Ken was stunned when he realized, a few seconds after, that the back of his head had barely touched the dirt in front of the wooden porch. Not bad, Ginge. A few more years and you might pose a credible threat. Jiraiya let Ken up and hauled him to his feet. If you don't mind, I think it's time we had a talk about the boy. Jiraiya's easy grin faded into a contemplative look. I have a few suggestions on his training. 2 hours later saw Ken on the couch in the rental house's living room looking down at the sheets of parchment strewn across the coffee table, trying to familiarize himself with their contents. Lord Jiraiya sat across from him, his expression neutral as he waited for the young Uzumaki to finish processing. In his opinion, these past hours had been quite fruitful. He'd asked about how Naruto had been trained so far and Ken's further plans, which the redhead had admitted he was largely making up as he went along. Knowing that, and based on his own experiences training Minato, as well as another true Uzumaki even earlier, the two had devised a far more detailed training regime and long-term plan. During this time, Jiraiya had also explained his connection to Minato and Kushina, and further revealed the fact that Naruto was his godson. When Ken had coldly asked why he had never looked after the boy, Jiraiya had offered the same reasons he always gave to Lord Sarutobi. Reasons that Ken had begrudgingly accepted. Well, I think I've done all I can here, Jiraiya said with a chuckle, rising from the seat he'd occupied all night and turned for the door with a wave. It was a genuine pleasure, Ginge. I'm sure I'll see you around. I respectfully disagree, Ken said, also rising to escort the toad sage out. I think if you stuck around one more morning and actually met your godson as his godfather, he would be absolutely thrilled. Jiraiya chuckled humorlessly. Yeah, no. I don't think he's ready for that quite yet. Jiraiya cast his gaze back at Naruto's door. Maybe in a few years, though. He looked to Ken. You've taken on quite a responsibility. Without warning, Jiraiya's expression became colder than ice. The look in his eyes belying the power and experience of one of the Leaf Village's greatest shinobi. Do not mess it up, he warned. Ken fought to keep a straight face, only a bead of sweat rolling past his eye betraying him. I'll do everything in my power to protect and guide him, Lord Jiraiya. You have my word as an Uzumaki. Jiraiya grinned. Well, that actually makes me feel better. Jiraiya's expression twisted as if he'd bitten into a lemon. A little warning on that front. One of the old coots with quite a bit of pull in the village is named Danzo Shimura. Ken arched an eyebrow at the familiar name, the name of the man who had been so wary of him. Normally I'd let you figure it out on your own, but Naruto is at stake here. So know this, Danzo is a ruthless and vicious warhawk who will stop at nothing in the goal of Leaf supremacy. He's Master Sarutobi's oldest and most tenacious rival, and he's had his sights on the Hokage hat since the third's appointment. Jiraiya leaned closer. Don't let your guard down around him or his forces. Ken clenched his fists and nodded. Good night and good luck, Ken Uzumaki. With that, Jiraiya finally took his leave. After a few minutes, Ken plopped back on the couch and organized the records of Naruto's training plan, his thoughts whirling. This task seemed to grow more and more daunting as time passed. Hope you enjoy part 6 of this fanfic, and if you did, please like, comment, and subscribe for more.